Throughout his life, he remained in the shadows, as if deliberately erasing himself from time. His face did not appear in newspapers, his voice was not heard on the airwaves, and his name was not mentioned in church bulletins or monastery archives. It was as if he walked alongside history, but left no trace of himself in it. However, 3 weeks before his death, this man, who was called the last true elder of the Kiev Pechesk Lavra, suddenly broke his vow of silence. He spoke softly, as if whispering into eternity, but each of his words turned out to be a prophecy that came true during the lifetime of those who dared to listen to him. Schemenak Avrami, born a Go-Pit, never sought power, recognition, or authority, and that is precisely what made his words so powerful. He said that the danger to Kiev would come not in the form of soldiers, but in the form of officials, that spiritual siege is more terrible than any physical siege, because it cannot be seen with the eyes, but it corrodes the heart. He warned that a time would come when the gospel would be interpreted as extremism, when the angel would be silent and the devil would say what everyone had long wanted to hear. Avrami said that when the light goes out, there is no need to panic, for in this darkness another light, a heavenly light, will enter, and those who preserve their souls will have nothing to fear. In the autumn months of 2020, when the pandemic had not yet descended upon the world, when it seemed that everything was under control, he quietly faded away in his cell, like a candle that is not extinguished by the wind, but embraced by the air itself. People came to this cell at night, silently, without words, with questions they did not dare to voice even to themselves. Avrami did not give direct answers, he just looked, and that look pierced the soul. He was not interested in politics, he did not distinguish between church schisms. For him there was only one schism, between light and darkness in the human heart. When spiritual clouds gathered over Lavra, he said, do not be afraid when the dome falls, be afraid if your faith falls at that moment. A stone can be erected, but grace cannot be restored with bricks. His gaze, that is what will remain in the memory of those who knew him. Deep as night and bright as the last star before dawn. Everything began as he predicted, not with thunder, not with the fall of towers, not with a volley of shots, but with a quiet change in vocabulary. The old man said that a lie is not always the opposite of the truth. Sometimes it is its mirror, in which the truth is barely distorted. He warned that a time would come when people would call the spiritual cultural and the sacred archaic. He said that the word sin would become awkward, it would be replaced by the term personal choice, and prayer would be called a ritual practice subject to regulation. And all this would happen not in the future, but now, in those days when the leaves begin to fall and the sky becomes low and heavy. Avrami repeated that the siege would not be visible because it was already inside, in people's minds and words. He saw how the breath of time was changing and felt how the ring was tightening not around the walls of the monastery, but around people's hearts. His voice was quiet but sharp as glass. He did not raise his hand in admonition, he did not curse, he did not accuse. He simply spoke the truth. People listened to him not for comfort, but for truth. And the clearer his speech became, the greater the fear grew in those who heard it. He said that the first to fall would not be the weak, but those who thought they had already stood firm. He said that the trials would not be terrible, they would be comfortable, and that was their danger. People would not be forced to turn away from their faith, they would be offered to make it part of the common discourse. They would not be expelled from the temples would remain, but emptiness would settle in them if reverence disappeared. And then, as the elder said, even a candle would not burn truly, because fire without grace is only heat, not light. He warned that the enemy would not take prisoners, but would offer compromise. That spiritual warfare is not a battle, but a choice. And that the main battle always takes place in silence, when a person is alone with their conscience. Avrami said that a day would come when confession to a priest would be seen as interference, and preaching the gospel as an act of psychological pressure. People would be afraid to speak, not because they were forbidden to, but because they did not want to. And then silence would become a new form of betrayal. The elder claimed that the spiritual night he warned about would last longer than it seemed. It would have no beginning and no end, it would spread across the consciousness of generations. And yet he did not speak with despair. He spoke with hope, but it was not an easy hope of consolation, but a heavy one, like a cross. Hope that requires faithfulness, even when everything is falling apart. He repeated, grace is not taken away by force, it is given away. And so he urged us to hold on, to stand firm, even when everything around us was falling. By the end of September, his body had almost refused to serve him. He could no longer get up, and his students came to his cell themselves. He spoke briefly, but every word was remembered as one remembers the date of a tragedy. Once he said, "When silence becomes louder than prayer, then the countdown will begin." He knew that the siege he spoke of had already begun, not because it had been declared, but because hearts were beginning to tire. He asked them not to panic, not to rush about, not to argue, but simply not to give up. "It is not the strong who will endure, but those who have not betrayed," he said. And then, on one of the last nights, when the cell smelled of wax and autumn dampness, he said something that people are still afraid to quote aloud. "When you hear that truth is a matter of interpretation, remember, then the lie has already won." He closed his eyes, and the anxiety disappeared from his face. Silence remained, but not as silence, as an echo of something that was yet to come. He left no books, no will, no successor. He simply left, leaving people with the most important thing, prophetic clarity and inner judgment. He did not speak loudly. His voice was soft, but there was a strange power in it, not one that oppresses, but one that penetrates. He did not call for arms, did not call for the defense of borders, did not discuss decrees and reforms. He spoke of silence that creeps in unnoticed, like a shadow, while a person's heart is distracted. He called it an invasion without enemies, a siege without besiegers, a war without shots. His predictions sounded almost absurd to those who were not yet able to hear. He warned that a new enemy would come with speeches about progress, with papers about reform, with terms that would elicit approval. And that is when everything would begin to collapse. Not the walls, but the foundations. Not externally, but from within. The elder of Rami saw that the first blow would fall on the Lavra, not as a building, but as the heart of prayer. He said, "Not because it is politically inconvenient, but because it is still alive." And living faith irritates a dead system. Those who pray disturb the silence of evil. As long as the light burns inside the cells, darkness cannot enter completely, but as soon as the brothers themselves begin to extinguish it, it will be too late. He knew that the struggle would begin not with prohibitions, but with comforts. Not with shackles, but with soft pillows. Not with blows, but with renaming. He warned of spiritual occupation, quiet, patient, calculating. At the time, it seemed like a metaphor, a strange old man's fear. But when the first attacks, scandals, and loud accusations began, when cameras began to invade the altar, it became clear, he knew. He said that the most powerful weapon of the future would be language. A new discourse. People will be told that truth is discrimination. That faith is a form of radicalism. That prayer is interference. That the cross is a symbol of oppression. Everything will be turned upside down. And they will begin to turn their own people upside down. Those who were supposed to stand firm would bend. Those who were supposed to protect would surrender. And those who were not called would speak on behalf of the church. He said that the first betrayal would not be the law, but compromise. That there would be those who would say, "We need to change. We need to be flexible. The main thing is love." But the elder replied sharply, "Love without truth is poison. It is betrayal in a sweet wrapper." He predicted the emergence of a new religion, skillfully assembled from beautiful words, aesthetics, humanism, but without the cross, without pain, without blood, without repentance. It will be cozy, kind, modern. There will be room for everything in it, except God. And millions will accept it. Not because they believe, but because it will tell them what they want to hear. He called it the soft Antichrist. Not a beast with horns, but an idea. Not tyranny, but a proposal. It will not frighten, it will persuade. He will talk about goodness, equality, peace. And that is why he will be accepted. True evil does not come with an axe. It comes with a smile. He said that his goal was not to destroy the temple, but to make it empty, so that people would leave it themselves, without noticing that they had lost the most important thing. The elder often returned to the theme of division. He said, "Do not fear persecution, fear discord. Discord is a poison that is served as medicine. First they will say that the old forms are outdated. Then, that the new ones are more convenient. And then they will say that there is more than one truth. And in this confusion, those who held the truth will find themselves exiled. They will not be cursed, they will simply be forgotten. They will not be forbidden to speak, they will simply be ignored. Those who were faithful will find themselves on the sidelines, and those who were flexible will find themselves on the podium. He said that one day only the form will remain on the cross. Only the plaque. And the crucified one himself will disappear. And what is most frightening is that people will not notice. They will think that everything is fine. That this is how it should be. That Christ is an idea, not a person. That sacrifice is a metaphor, not blood. That resurrection is an allegory, not a victory over death. He did not call for battle. He called for faithfulness. He did not say, fight. He said, stay. Do not betray. Do not give in. Do not mistake silence for peace. He said, the day will come when everything around you will call you to compromise. And then the Lord will not ask what you have built. He will ask if you remained standing when others fell. And in these words was the essence of his entire mission. Not to save the world, but to remind us how not to lose our souls. Don't give it up. That's what Avrami said in his last days, when his speech became barely audible, but every phrase carried the weight of prophetic gold. He knew that the moment would come when even those closest to him, those who stood beside him today, would begin to whisper, be reasonable, don't stand out, wait, everything will work out. And then, in this simple whisper, in this seemingly good advice, everything will be decided. Not outwardly, inwardly. The fate of the soul is determined not by a cry, but by a concession. And those who yield will leave, slowly, quietly, with a smile, but forever. And those who remain standing will see the truth, not in the form of glory, not in the radiance of miracles, but in a bitter, clear, but saving light. He did not say, it will be scary, he said. It will be subtle. Not torture, but whispers. Not blood, but pressure. Not prison, but dismissal, isolation, silent resentment, the weary gaze of friends. This is the persecution of the new age. Persecution not for faith, but for loyalty. After all, betrayal is rarely harsh. More often than not, it is gentle. That is why he left these 3 words, stand, believe, wait. Not as a motto, but as a covenant. As a vow to those who are still able to hear. Years have passed, and the fall of 2020 is now a thing of the past, but the words spoken in a modest cell above the caves of the Lavra now sound louder than any rally. Because they were not about time, but about essence. Avrami did not name his enemies. He did not make predictions based on dates. He said that when it begins, you will know not from the news, but from your heart. Because the enemy will come not in uniform, but in a suit. Not with cries of attack, but with speeches about peace, progress, and security. He said, as soon as the spirit of darkness begins to speak the language of the law, the siege will begin. And today this is evident. They don't close, they reform. They don't ban, they renew. They don't destroy, they optimize. And the word faith sounds suspicious, and the word truth sounds almost like a challenge. He warned that the main substitution would be in meanings. That one day the temple would not be destroyed, but grace would disappear. That the building would remain, even the service would remain, but the fire in the altar would disappear. And then prayer will become a formality. And if at that moment a person chooses comfort, silence, approval, he will have already made his choice. Because the Satan of the new era will not be a monster. He will be an idea. He will be a system. He will be logic without God, humanism without sacrifice, mercy without truth. He will say everything correctly, but there will be no love in his voice. He said that Kiev would be the first. And everything came true. Strikes, scandals, raiding, occupation, silent pressure, cold laws. But it's not about Kiev, or the Lavra, or even Ukraine. The point is that this is the heart, the spiritual heart. And if it falters, if prayer falls silent, then cracks will spread across the earth. He did not talk about politics. He did not divide people into categories. He said only one thing: where faith is alive, darkness cannot penetrate. Where faith has died, light will not return. But he did not frighten. He warned. And he hoped. He said, when everything darkens, you will still see, if you have not sold your sight. When the voice of truth becomes quieter than the voice of compromise, you will still know where the truth is, if you have kept it within yourself. Because the war will not be for land, but for souls. And the old man said, "You are not a building, you are a temple. You are not a crowd, you are a witness. You are not in the system, you are on the path. And if that path ends, stand firm. If the voice disappears, believe. If the miracle does not come, wait." Because when everything collapses and only the form remains on the cross, when even preaching becomes a crime and love is without truth, something unshakable will remain. Not ideology, not organization, but Christ, alive, crucified, resurrected. He said, "When the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth?" Avrami left, but his words remained as an answer. He will find it if you do not retreat. And that is what it is all about now. Everything that is happening is just a test. Not of strength, not of numbers, but of the heart. And as long as it burns, the siege is not over. And there is still a chance. To stand, to believe, to wait. And if you accept him, the one who comes not with threats but with comfort, not with a whip but with gentle words, he will give you everything. Comfort, order, security, the ability to breathe evenly. He will offer you freedom from fear, freedom from loneliness, freedom from the need to choose. But in return, he will demand the most precious thing, your soul. Not by taking it by force, but by putting it to sleep, making you forget that you ever had it. The elder Avrami said that before our eyes, empires will fall, alliances will collapse, money will lose its value, armies will crumble, but faith will remain. Because faith is not a system, not a regime, not an order. It is fire. Fire does not need walls, it needs a heart. It is the last bastion, and if you betray it for the sake of peace, you have already lost. But if you stand firm, you become a light, even if there is only darkness around you. He said that these were not lofty words, not metaphors, not the poetics of fear. It is a strategy for survival, passed on to those who want to get through the night. It is a guide for the long road ahead. He knew that the visible church could disappear, not because it would be destroyed, but because it would give in. But the moment the temple disappears, the cell will remain. When the choir falls silent, whispers will be heard. When the cross is removed from the dome, a cross will rise in the heart. And no one can take away this inner cross except yourself. He said that if grace departs, there will be no war, only emptiness. And emptiness is more frightening. Because without grace, it is impossible to survive. Even if the temple stands, even if the service continues. And that is why he repeated, this applies to everyone. It does not matter who you are, where you are, how you lived before. What matters is what you choose when the real siege begins. Not a military one, but an internal one. A siege of the spirit. A siege of faith. And the enemy's main weapon will not be fear, but division. They will pit everyone against everyone else. Old and new. Believers and secularists. Conservatives and progressives. But the truth is not in who is right. The truth is in steadfastness. In loyalty. In the choice made in silence, when no one is watching. What to do? He gave the answer. The same one he repeated as he was dying. Stand. Believe. Wait. Do not retreat, even when everything is falling apart. Believe, even when the heavens are silent. Wait, even when the miracle does not come. Because God is not silent, He is watching. He is near. He weighs hearts. And when the hour comes, the word will be spoken. And on that day, it will not matter who you listen to. It will matter who you chose. Did you choose truth or comfort? Light or compromise? Christ or order? Avrami no longer spoke of countries. He did not name enemies. His gaze rose above borders, above dogmas, above names. He saw that the essence of the battle was not in ideologies. It was in souls. He repeated 3 words more and more often, which became his legacy. People perceived them as a prayer, as a code, as a key that would open the gates at the very last minute. Because when everything falls, only they will remain. He knew that chaos, fear, and betrayal would come. That even in cassocks there would be persecutors, that even from the altars there would be speeches about flexibility, renewal, comfort. He knew that the enemy would not come in the form of horror. He would come as an ally, as a kind advisor, like a cultural teacher. He would say the right things. He would offer peace. And that is why it would be difficult to recognize him. Only the remnant, as he called them, would be able to stand firm. The remnant does not mean the weak. They are those who chose to stay when everyone else left. Those who did not succumb to light without warmth, to speech without spirit, to truth without sacrifice. He said there would be few of them. They won't be on the front pages. They won't be invited to the studios. They won't organize marches. They will be in basements, attics, forests, apartments, solitary cells, where they cannot be seen, but can be heard. Their prayers will be weak, but genuine. Their love will be quiet, but alive. Their forgiveness will be bitter, but sincere. They will keep the world, and the world will depend on them, and no one but God will know their names. But it is for them that the earth will stand. And the elder warned that new false teachers would come, and they will speak better than the old ones, more beautifully, more convincingly. They will be friendly, but there will be no grace in their words, no spirit, only bright deception. And then everything will be decided. Then the hour of truth will come. Then it will be revealed who was in faith and who was just walking alongside. And at that hour, God will not ask what you said. He will ask if you stayed when everyone else left. For the sake of him who once walked this path first. For the sake of him who did not retreat when everyone else betrayed him. For the sake of the one who chose the cross, not comfort. Precisely for his sake, not for victory, not for reward, not for glory, but for faithfulness. The elder said, "You will not be able to walk this path if you look at people. They will fall. They will betray. They will be silent when they should cry out, and cry out when they should pray. But if you look at Christ, you will stand firm." He said that there would come a time when even the righteous would doubt, when prayer would become empty and heaven would be deaf. But it is then, in the deepest darkness, that light will enter. Not external light, but internal light. Faith is not about seeing miracles, but about burning without fuel. He warned that there would be a moment when everything external would seem true, but the heart would shrink. And it is precisely this trembling that is the sign. Do not ignore it, because the voice of truth is not loud. It is always deep within. When everything is over, wars, reforms, conflicts, churches, unions, only one question will remain: to whom do you belong? Not where you were, not what you said, but to whom did your heart belong? And if it remained faithful, even if broken, even if silent, it won. Abraham said, "With God, it is not the strong who prevail, but the faithful." Because the power of the world is depleted, but faithfulness grows in darkness. And in this was his hope. He did not believe in mass awakening. He believed in the remnant, in those who will remain when everyone else is gone, who will say, "Yes," when everyone else is silent. Those who bow their knees not before the system, but before God. He called them lamps, not because they are bright, but because they do not go out. They do not give up. They do not retreat. They are the salt that keeps the world going. Before his death, he said, "If you forget me, it's okay. But if you forget these 3 words, you will forget yourselves." Stand, believe, wait. This is not just advice. It is a spiritual standard raised on the last fortress where prayer can still be heard. Where Christ is not an image, but a living person. Where the cross is not a symbol, but a path. Where faith is not a decoration, but a breath. And when everything collapses, they will stand firm. Not because they were better, not because they were smarter, but because they remained, because they chose, because they preserved, for his sake, for the sake of truth, for the sake of love that does not betray. And then, as the elder promised, light will follow them. Not the light of spotlights, not the light of glory, but the only light that never fades. I would like to apologize in advance for any errors in the text or dubbing. I am still learning, and the language used on this channel is not my native language. The dubbing was done using artificial intelligence. Please point out any errors so that I can correct them and improve the quality of the content. I would also be happy if you shared your thoughts on the topic. Your support in the comments motivates me to continue searching for new interesting stories. Thank you for your understanding and participation. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new stories.